Hello and welcome to Noteworthy by Michelle. Today I'm going to start making one of these two journals, and there are two possibilities of covers. This is the cover from the September Florals Envelope Journal Kit by Noteworthy by Michelle. This is the cover. It's a little bit different. You'll see the writing here and here. This cover is the one that comes in the September Florals Envelope Journal add-on kit. And of course you can choose whichever one you like. I think for me, I prefer this one, and so I'm going to be using this. But I'll show you first the pages that you'll need. So you will need the September Florals Envelope Journal Kit. And in this kit are the 4 pages for the cover. Okay, so this is the first cover, and that's the cover that I'm not going to use. So I'm not going to use this page, but you certainly may. This is the cover, outside cover that goes with it. So you can use this and this. You will need, this is the inside cover. And this last page is the inside cover pockets. So these are the 4 pages that we'll be using to work our way through this cover. Now I will be sewing part of my cover, and you can sew it or not. That's completely up to you. So I'm going to take these 2 and I'm going to set them aside because I won't be using them. I will be using the cover option that comes in the add-on kit. And that will be this one and this one. And I'm going to put those 2 kind of close together so you can kind of see the difference between the 2. This one has a little bit more of a yellow tinge to it, and this is completely done with the ledger, whereas this has just some script writing. So now the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to follow the directions on this page. This is the bottom of the page, and it says score at 1.75 inches from top of page to make envelope flap. That's 1 3/4 inches. And so I have my scoreboard here, and it's a little old and it's a little dirty, but it works fine. And I'm just going to lay that up like that and find my 1 3/4 mark, and there we have my score. Now some people would tell you that it would be better to make that score from the back side, but I wanted to make sure that I have it here. So there I have my score, and that's the only score that I'm going to do at this time. Now I did begin by making this journal, and when I made this journal, I made the cover and then I put the pages in, and let me show you what happened when I did that. Okay, so right now I've added this, and it's just, you know, a TN, a travel notebook. But when I cut the pages that fit in the journal, I discovered that my journal gets fat very quickly. And so I needed to make some adjustments for that. Now, if you are going to use a skinny journal and your journals tend to be skinny, you won't have to make this adjustment. But my journals end up a little bit fatter. And so you'll notice that here, this journal is a little bit wider than this one. And the reason being is I took this page. Hold on, let me open this and I'll show you from the inside. From here to here is the page. You'll see that I cut it down the center, and I added this little flap right here to the center to make it wider. I like to have a few things hanging off the end, some pretties, and that gives me the extra room that I need to have a journal that sticks out a bit more. And so that's why I did that. So you'll need to decide whether you need that extra room or not. I personally do. The other option was to take the edges of these pages and cut them flush. And I do that many times, but this time I just did not want to do that because I didn't want to lose any of the design. Excuse me. So for this journal, we will be adding this piece, okay? I'm going to start making the flap for the cover, and I'll be making this flap and this cover, and I will be needing this page and this page. I'm also going to use this, and this is a mailer from the post office that I received something in it, and the paper is made of Tyvek, and it makes the journal strong, and that's what I'm going to use to strengthen areas that there might be a little bit more pressure put on, and I don't want my journal to tear. And so I have cut 2 pieces. They're about 8 1/4 inch by maybe 1.5, something like that. And then I'm also cut this little itty bitty piece here. And that's to reinforce this area where I have the grommet or the eyelet put in. So what I do is I turn the paper over, and you're going to need a pencil or a pen for this. I like to use a pencil so that it doesn't leave a huge mark. And I hold this page up to the light. And as I hold it up to the light, I am looking for this area and this area and this area, okay? And I'm going to mark those on the back of this page. So as I hold it up to the light, and I can't do that on camera because my light isn't there, I mark this, this, this. So I have marked, here is my edge of my flap, this is the edge of my paper, and this is the side where my flap is because I want to know that. Okay, so then I'm also going to look, and I'm going to see about approximately 1.5 inches, actually 1 3/4 inches on that side and 1 3/4 inches on this side. And that tells me where I am going to put my reinforcements. So I'm using the 3-in-1 glue because it dries quickly, and I personally will be doing some stitching on mine, and I don't want that to get anything on it. And so I just I glue that in place so that it reinforces the area. And that's all I do for that, okay? Now, the next thing I do is I take my paper, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the center of this paper with those lines and that line. And this is the part where my flap is, and it's going to be lined up like that. So I'm just going to set this up here to give me an idea of how much glue I need to put on. And I will add my glue. And I want a good amount. My glue is getting a little thick. I probably need to add some acetone nail polish remover to it. But for now, this will work just fine. So I just add my glue. I'll put a little more under there. I'm going to come up just slightly above my line. Okay, so now it comes time to line this up, and I'm lining it up here. I kind of have that in the middle there, and that's that, and I just kind of use my gift card or credit card or bone folder to flatten that out. Okay. So next, what I'm going to do is take I'm going to put the lid on my glue so it doesn't dry out anymore. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut along the edge of the paper just to get rid of this excess paper that I don't want. And I do want this to be as close to this paper as I can get it. So I'll just cut it off flush with that. I'm not looking for perfection, I'm just looking for pretty. So I'm okay if it's not exactly perfect. And you'll notice there that the corner of my page did not stick. I'm going to go ahead and make this general cutout here. I do want to go along the edge of this, and I like to do it in one little scoop there, and that part is done. I like to change my scissors out. I'm going to set this aside. These are just some scraps that I can use in other places, either, you know, as a little fly or something. We'll see what happens with those, but we'll save them for now. So I have these little scissors that I think they're supposed to be like toenail clippers. I've never used them for that, but I use them when I have curves to cut on my pages. And I turn it to match with the curve. And since my curve goes the other way, I turn my scissors around. And I find that the edges of it have a much cleaner curve when I do this than if I use my bigger scissors. And so I'm just going to cut out around the edges, trying to get as close to it as possible. There we go. Oops, I didn't do that one very well, but that's okay. Okay, so there we have that part of the flap. Now, during this journal, usually when I make a journal, I use Ranger ink, and I usually use the coffee shade. But for this one, I'm going to use the Ranger Distress Oxide in Victorian Velvet. I have found that it has a lovely shade that goes well with the printable. And so I am just going to ink my edges. And when I ink my edges, I like to keep my ink dauber at about a 45-degree angle and just go on the edges of the page with it. And so I'm going to do this to the front and the back of this, all the way around on each side. For the body of the journal, we're going to need 2 of 3 pages, depending on which journal you're making. If you're making the ledger one, you'll need this and this. And if you're making the script one, you'll need this and this. So you can take and pick which one you would like to use. I am going to use this one and this for mine, because I'm actually making both journals. So with the flowers at the top, you want to turn this page over. With this page, you want the top of this page on the right hand side. Now, it doesn't matter if you're using this one or if you're using this one. You want the top going to the right. And we're going to take and glue this page in place. Now, when I glue, I like to use the 3-in-1 glue. It dries quickly. And I want to make sure that I get a good, it's taken a little while to get there, a good amount of glue in the center of the page. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm going to end up cutting this page in half. Now, you could cut this page in half and then glue, but I prefer just to glue it all at once. So I want to look at this just one more time to make sure my flowers are at the top. And then I'm going to make sure that the top of this page is to the right. And I'm just going to set it on there. Now, I like to kind of go like that in order to make sure the edges are even. And I'm just going to use my bone folder or my gift card and kind of smush it all together and get it to where it's there. Now, you'll notice here that my side isn't perfect, but that's okay because, as I said before, we don't need to be perfect. We just want it to be pretty. At this time, we're going to take this and we are going to cut this in half. And that would be 5.5 inches for my paper because it's 8.5 by 11. And I know that the 5.5 mark on this particular cutter is right at the edge there. So there we have the cut. What we're going to do is we are going to take another one of this page or of this page, whichever one you're using. And even though I have this here, I'm going to show you with this one. I have cut it to 5 inches. And after I cut that to 5 inches, I am going to score this at 2.5, which is half of the thing, half of it. It does not have to be perfect. Okay. So I have this scored at 2.5 inches. I'm going to keep my scoreboard handy because I'm going to use it again. But before we move on, I am looking for another sheet of the Tyvek. And I have a part of it here. It's got a little bit of... I'm going to glue this down in the center. And that is going to give my journal a little bit more stability. So I'm just going to open that up and glue it down in the center of one of the halves. Okay. Use my bone folder and get that out of there. Okay, and now we take and we glue this together. It's going to be folded in half, glued together. And I do want to point out that I have inked just the top edge and the bottom edge of this so that in case there's any white showing, it'll look pretty pink. Fold it over and crease it in. Okay. So now we need our scoreboard again. And what we're going to do is we are going to score this. This is 2.5 inches. We're going to take half of that, which is 1.25. Whoops. And you have to kind of do it carefully because it's pretty thick. And it likes to go off the groove. Now we can put that away. And we're going to take and we're going to fold this in half. Okay. And I like to press it from both sides. And you'll see that here I have a lip of white. And that's okay for now because we're going to take our cutting board and we're going to be taking that lip off while it's folded in half. And that way it will be even on both sides. So I just kind of measure it to where I want it. I want it to be 1 inch, really. So I have that at 1 inch, and we're just going to get rid of that edge. Now, did it get rid of enough? That's the question. It did not, so I'm going to go a little bit less than that, just for now. Okay, there we go. I am going to go ahead and color along the edge here because there is a little bit of white showing, and I don't care for the white showing. I don't want to put too much emphasis on this area because it's an addition to the journal, and it just doesn't need that. I'm going to check the top and the bottom and ink that. So now we have our 2 halves, and what we want to do is we want to make sure that our writing is going the same direction. I'm going to switch over to this other one because I'm working with it. Here we go. So we want to make sure that our writing is going the same direction. It's kind of going to go together like that. But I want to make sure that I have a pretty even line. And so I'm going to use this ruler, and I'm going to line up the bottom, and I'm going to line up the side, and I'm going to take, it would have been 5.5 inches, but I am going to set my ruler for 5 1/4. So I've made it 5 1/4 here, and I've kept it on the 1 inch line here. I'm going to take a pencil, and I am going to draw my line down on that. On this one, I'm going to take 1/4 inch. See if I can do it this way without turning it around. And I'm going to draw my line down. So that gives me the guidelines for gluing this piece on. So now we're going to take our piece and we are going to glue it to these other 2 pieces. We want to make sure that they're all facing the same way. And I'm placing glue inside the 1/4 inch margin for both of these pieces. And I'm just going to go ahead and glue it at the same time, since my glue is getting kind of thick and hard to manage. And then I just line this up with my line. I come down and I try to make sure that my edges are even here. Give it a little finger press, and then use my bone folder to press it. And you'll notice that when I used my bone folder, it moved a little bit, so I need to make sure to straighten out that edge. I'm going to do the same for this side. Press it. And there we have this together. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get the globs of glue off where there was some that came out, just because I don't really want that there. And now we have our piece for the inside of the body. Okay, so now what I do is I take a look here, and if you'll notice right here there is a little bit of a lip, and I don't want that lip to show, and so I'm just gonna kind of straighten it out a little bit. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be pretty. That's my favorite saying. So at this time, we're going to do the sewing. Now, if you are not going to sew, that's fine. I would just make sure that this is very, very secure with whatever is your favorite glue to use. Okay, I prefer to sew mine. And to sew it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it to the back side, And right here where we have this lip, I am going to sew 1/8 of an inch to the inside of that line and 1/8 of an inch to the inside of this one. And the sewing will be on this piece, not on this piece. So here you can see I've gone ahead and I have sewn this one. And you can see that it catches in the front and it catches in the back. Okay? So while we're sewing, we can also sew our pockets. Now for my pocket, I like to go down, around, and up. And I kind of like to leave my strings hanging. So I'm going to sew that. And I'm also going to sew this one. And I'll go all the way around this one. Or I can just go on one side. And we have the option of choosing whether we want it to go this way or this way. I kind of like it this way. And that's how I'm going to sew mine on. I'm not actually going to sew it all at the same time. I'm going to sew my pockets and then glue them in place, but you could certainly sew this all in one round. My machine is a little finicky and I don't like the added pressure to go there. We're not gluing these on yet unless you're going to sew at the same time. But for now, you're going to sew these 2 lines and then we're going to take the cover and we're also going to sew the cover. The flap portion. And when we sew the flap portion, there are 3 things that we're going to do. Okay? We are going to sew a straight line down this edge. And then on the flap portion, not the spine portion, we're going to sew 1/4 of an inch here. And then we're going to sew around the edge of the flap. And starting here. And I leave my threads hanging for now. Okay, so once we have done that, we take this with this up, and we want to make sure that's on the top. This is going to go here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I have my fold here, and again, I'm going to mark 1/4 of an inch. I have to get my glasses on, I can't see. And I'm going to use pencil lightly because I don't want it to show too badly. I'm going to line up at the bottom and I'm going to line up. And let me do it from this side. So this is 175. I want to make the line at about 1.5 inches from this edge. So we have 1 1.5 inches. And my top and my bottom are even. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my line. So this is going to butt up to here. Okay. Let me just look at this a moment and make sure. Yes. Okay. So I am going to take glue and I am going to put it not on the flap side, but on the spine side. Ooh, and my glue was exploding a little bit. I am also going to glue, move my strings out of the way. I want to glue here and I want to glue here. And then we set this together. Right on my line. And I want to make sure that they're lined up at the top and the bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and use my bone folder. And I press out from the center because I don't want to close up the area of my pocket. So we have now attached the flap. And this is how it looks. This area is open. I'm not going to show you that right now because I don't want it to come apart. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and sew. And as I sew, I am going to start here come all the way down, making sure to grab these strings as I go with a 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to go all the way down around to here and back around this way to here and then stop. And that will be the sewing for the journal. Now, if you want to, this is the time when you could put this flap in. Okay, if you want this edge sewn, you need to do that now. If you don't, you can just kind of put this in. I'm going to go ahead and put it in on this one, just to show you. Now, hopefully my machine won't give me too much trouble going through several pieces of cardstock. So I have it here. I'm going to line it up with the edge of my paper. And there we go. Use my bone folder. Okay. And we are just going to follow. Oh, you know what? Before we do that, we need to do one more sewing down. We're going to sew down across this. So on the spine, a 1/4 inch in, and we want a generous 1/4 inch because we want to catch this piece here. Okay. So we'll go ahead and sew that line now. Okay, so as you can see, I have sewn here, down here, and then I went ahead and I sewed around all the way around. Now, you can leave your threads on or you can take them off. It is completely up to you. We'll turn it over and here we have this. So now we have to add this pocket. And I'm just going to glue that in place real quick. And you'll see here my stitching got a little towards the edge of that. It's a good thing I glued it down ahead of time. And that's one of the reasons I typically will, I don't sew the pocket in. I usually glue it in for that reason. Okay, and I like to keep my line of glue right on my thread line. It helps keep the stitches in place. And then I'm just going to put this here and here, straighten it out pretty much. And again, I move away instead of in, and that way I don't, if I were to go this way, I would be dragging the glue inwards, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to do it that way. So there is the inside of our journal base, and that is complete. We do, however, need to go back to the outside. And we're going to go here to this. We're going to be adding our pocket, which is on the same page that the flap portion was on. And I'm going to bring it down here a little bit below that line. That way it kind of hides it. And I'm going to put this here. So again, I'm going to use the glue on my thread line. And put my pocket in place, and that way the base of our journal will be finished. And I just kind of line it up with that. That looks good to me. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. There we go. Perfect. I go ahead and again moving to the outside. There we go. So we have our journal base is complete. We have a pocket here to put something, and we have our pocket here. Now I am going to clip my threads because I don't want them. I will leave a little thread here because I like it there on that pocket, but the rest of these for me are coming off. Okay, so there we have it. I hope you have enjoyed that part of our journal, and tune in tomorrow for the pages.